At the start of Jesus' ministry, he walked along the shores of Galilee and invited two brothers, Peter and Andrew, to follow him. His invitation to these fishermen was to become fishers of men. They weren't rich, educated, important, or spiritual elites. They were just ordinary guys about to begin an extraordinary journey. Jesus invested 3 years into his group of 12 followers and others, teaching, demonstrating, experiencing, practicing, reviewing, living life together. At the end of his time with them, he gave them a clear instruction: go and make disciples of all nations. Their mandate was to copy him, to do what he did with them, and go and make Jesus' disciples as well. They didn't have it all together when Jesus went back to the Father, but they had a model to follow and everything they needed to fulfill the mission. It's a bit like this apple. There's nothing special about it, but from its skin to its flesh to its seeds, it's ready, equipped with what it needs to make more apples. Many apples, just as big, fresh and juicy as this one. Each of them also with everything needed to multiply. It's not going to be easy for this apple. It's going to need soil, sun and rain to help it, resist bugs and pests, endure heat and wind. But the fruit of that effort is what it was designed to do. The first disciples were equipped with the right stuff to multiply. Yes, they needed people around them and the power and leading of the Holy Spirit. Yes, they would endure hardship and persecution, but they were ready to multiply, making Jesus' followers just as passionate and effective as they were. As a disciple of Jesus, I wonder sometimes if I'm more like a faded photocopy than a fresh apple. You know the ones. Obviously a copy of a copy of a copy, each time getting a little bit less like the original. It's got the same content as the original, but it's faded, hard to read, and there's bits that have been stained or torn off over time. And it has no real hope of multiplying without actually going back to the photocopier. It makes us ask the question, what sort of discipling have we each received in our Christian walk? But also, what does that mean for the discipling we can offer others? If we go and make disciples today, are we going to produce followers of Jesus that are juicy apples or like the faded photocopy? In this series, we want to get back to the heart of discipling by looking at how Jesus did it, to be inspired by what we're already equipped to offer others, as well as how others can inspire us to be more mature followers of Jesus. We were never called to walk this journey on our own. That's not Jesus' model. And it's why we've called the series Side by Side. Healthy discipleship can't be squeezed into a self-help program, a 12-week course, or 4-part sermon series. It is a way of life, an attitude, a culture within a community of believers. For Jesus' first disciples, there was very little confusion as to what being a Jesus follower looked like, what they were following and multiplying. To know and worship him, to give up their normal life and dedicate their lives to following him, to love God and others, and to serve. And Jesus followers have been living these things out ever since. Over the centuries and across the world, Jesus followers have faced the challenge of how to apply his teaching in their situation. From persecuted people living in caves, to business people setting up communities for their staff and families, from monks dedicating their lives to holiness and serving, to missionaries establishing churches in remote parts of the globe. The list goes on and on. One of the biggest challenges we face to being effective disciples in our situation, our culture, our world, is not poor teaching or lack of information. It's not persecution or the country's governing laws. It's not poverty or lack of resources. It's time. As a culture, we are busy to a frantic level. I know a number of people who struggle with silence. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them feel awkward. So, for a whole day, they make sure music, conversation, background noise, or the radio fills that void. I'm concerned that our culture is like that with time. I could tell you to spend more time discipling or being discipled, but would it just end up on a to-do list, along with a massive list of other expectations people have on you? Discipleship can't be a task or event. It will only produce faded photocopies if that's what we turn it into. Jesus said he offers streams of living water. A stream is consistent. It continues to flow. It doesn't stagnate. But I'm not sure our lifestyles can handle streams. We prefer waves, the kind you see at a surf beach. They rise up big and powerful. We get excited and paddle like mad to catch the wave, making time in our busy schedule to be part of it. For a little while, there is a thrill and momentum, but the wave begins to lose its energy. It peters out to a shallow area with just the bubbles on the surface to remind us of the amazing wave it once was. We prefer waves because we're being consistently bombarded with different priorities and expectations. For many, a normal week has at least one, probably more calendar clashes, decisions that need to be made about what is more important. We need the big, powerful wave to get us excited again and to help us shift our priorities. However, over time, the risk is that the big, powerful waves start to look less appealing because they just remind us of the disappointment of them fading out. We're less inclined to work hard, paddling back out to catch another one, because we feel like each time we just end up in a puddle on the sand again. Discipleship isn't a wave, it's a stream. We're not hoping this series gets us excited for the next week, or month, or even a year. As a church, we want to make mature followers of Jesus that are hungry for his word, eager to live out that word in the Holy Spirit's strength, and can reflect and persevere through both the celebrations and the challenges. We want to make disciples that can also make disciples, to multiply. And that takes time. We want to look beyond our own circumstances and journey side by side with other disciples, living out the calling Jesus has placed on each of our lives. We hope to lay a foundation to keep that stream flowing till the day Jesus comes again or takes each of us home. To do this, we've broken down how Jesus modelled discipleship to his followers into 3 essential parts. They're not complicated or deeply theological, but that is deliberate. How can we multiply if we need a theological degree before we begin? So in the following weeks, we're going to explore these 3 parts. They are learn. We read lots of Jesus' teaching in the Gospels, both what he said and what he modelled. This provides our objective, our agenda, our goals, but it also equips us with what we need to know how to handle the challenges that we'll face when we attempt to do the next part, which is apply. We don't want to just learn, observe, study, read, and talk about being a Jesus follower. We need to put it into action. We're all apprentices. We may not have learned everything or feel like we can do it well, but with the little or much that we've learned, we need to exercise that. It's on-the-job training. The third part is review. Once we've had a go, put something we've learned into action, we often forget or are too busy to go back and reflect on how it went, to ask the questions. How did it go? What worked? What didn't? This part is easily overlooked, but is as important as the first 2. Each of you are probably a little more excited or interested in one of these 3 than the others. Some people are eager to move past the learning and get out there and just do it. Others want to hold off with the action, spend more time learning, prepare well, and understand more. While some may be more interested in reflecting on where things are at, giving feedback on what's working and what we need to learn or action more of. They're all good parts, but on their own, each are flawed. They need each other. We each need to be able to handle all three parts, both when others are discipling us and when we are making disciples. As I've spent time with different people in the church body, hearing their experiences, their journey, their passions and frustrations, there is often a sense of aloneness, of having discovered, wrestled, battled, failed or succeeded, mainly alone. Sometimes clinging to past memories of better, more exciting times. There's often bottled up frustrations about what's needed to change or could be done better in the church, in society and in the world. Often there's an uncertainness of what God is saying, of what the future holds, and questions about self-worth, value, and wondering what one can contribute. On the surface, they sound like a bunch of separate issues, but in many of the stories, I hear echoes of poor or missed discipleship. Jesus' plan was always for us to journey together, side by side. Anything less is just compromising his plan and making things harder on ourselves. So that's the heart of it. Don't worry if there's parts that don't quite fit together yet. We'll tease things out over the coming weeks. What's important tonight is understanding that Jesus taught and demonstrated discipleship to his followers and instructed them to do the same. So we all need discipling and need to be discipling others. We want to disciple well so we can also multiply well. This isn't a fad or season or wave. It's a way of life, a church culture we can get better at. There's many things that will distract us from discipling, but the biggest is time. Jesus had a good plan. Let's explore that together.